And that responsibility ultimately falls on Rose. My manager didn't raise his voice. He didn't hesitate. He said my name like a conclusion. The room went still. Not awkward still. Dangerously still. The kind of silence where people stop breathing because they don't want to be noticed choosing sides. I felt every eye land on me at once. Some curious. Some relieved it wasn't them. Some already convinced. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. On the screen behind him were bullet points I didn't recognize. Decisions I hadn't made. Emails taken out of context. A timeline that rewrote months of work into a single neat failure, mine. My heart started pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. And then he said it. For transparency, we'll be moving forward without Rose on this account. That was the moment I understood. This wasn't criticism. This was an execution. I sat frozen in my chair while the meeting continued around me. My manager kept talking, explaining next steps, reassigning my projects to other team members. Each word felt like another nail in a coffin he'd been building for weeks. Why did he come prepared to ruin me like this? I felt it. The pressure to cry, to defend myself, to say this isn't true before the lie calcified into accepted reality. Instead I smiled. Not a warm smile. Not a friendly one. The kind of tight, controlled smile you use when your instincts tell you to watch, not speak. My manager glanced at me, just for half a second. Confused. He'd expected something, anger, panic, embarrassment. Anything he could use to justify what he'd just done. I nodded once, slowly. The meeting moved on without me. I sat there while my career was dismantled in real time. Hands folded in my lap, nails digging into my own skin so I wouldn't shake. Inside, something cold and focused clicked into place. Around me, colleagues shifted uncomfortably in their seats. A few wouldn't meet my eyes when I glanced their way. Others looked at me with something like pity, mixed with relief that they weren't the target. One woman I'd mentored last year was taking notes, probably about how to avoid becoming me. The projector hummed softly. My manager clicked to the next slide. A reorganization chart. My name was gone from every box. It was clean, efficient, complete. This wasn't spontaneous. He'd been planning this. I hadn't even reached my car when my phone buzzed. HR. Please schedule time this afternoon regarding today's meeting. No explanation. No context. Just procedure. I sat behind the wheel, keys untouched, watching coworkers file past me without meeting my eyes. People I'd trained. People I'd protected. People who now suddenly had reasons to believe I was careless, incompetent, expendable. That was when the anger finally hit. Not loud, not explosive. Heavy. Settling. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a setup. The parking lot felt too bright, too normal for what had just happened. Cars came and went. Someone laughed at something on their phone. The world kept moving while mine had just stopped. I looked at my phone again. That HR message wasn't a request. It was the next step in whatever process my manager had started. The machinery was already in motion. And I realized he'd been laying the groundwork long before today. Those small comments over the past few months. The way he'd started excluding me from certain emails. How he'd begun questioning my judgment on decisions I'd been making successfully for years. I thought he was just being difficult. I was wrong. My name is Rose Wilson. I'm 42 years old. I've worked in this company for over a decade. I don't network loudly. I don't posture. I deliver. Quietly. Reliably. The kind of person managers lean on, and then forget to credit. I believed competence would protect me. I believed that if I stayed professional, stayed loyal, stayed calm, I'd be safe. That belief shattered in a meeting room with my name glowing on a screen behind someone else's lies. I started at this company right out of graduate school. Worked my way up from junior analyst to senior project lead. I'd seen 3 CEOs, 4 restructures, and countless colleagues come and go. I was supposed to be the stable one. The reliable one. The one who would always be here. My manager had only been in his position for 18 months. Before that, he'd been lateral to me, same level, different department. When he got promoted, I'd congratulated him. Even helped him transition into the role, sharing institutional knowledge he needed. But this wasn't the first time he'd shifted blame. I just hadn't seen the pattern until now. Looking back, there were signs. Small things that seemed innocent at the time. Now they felt like breadcrumbs leading to today. 3 years earlier, he'd missed a deadline. Serious one. Fixed it. Stayed late. Reworked the plan. When leadership asked questions, I softened the truth. Framed it as a team issue rather than pointing fingers. He thanked me afterward. Said he wouldn't forget it. He did forget. But I didn't. It was a Friday afternoon in late summer. The client presentation was Monday morning. He'd been responsible for the financial projections, the core of our pitch. When I asked to review them Thursday night, he said everything was ready. It wasn't. The numbers didn't add up. The model had fundamental errors. If we'd presented that work, we would have lost the account and our credibility. I spent the entire weekend rebuilding it from scratch. Barely slept. My family dinner plans were cancelled. My daughter's soccer game was missed. My husband brought me coffee at the office Sunday afternoon, worried about how pale I looked. Monday morning we presented. The client loved it. Leadership praised the work. He accepted the praise without mentioning my weekend. Without acknowledging the disaster I'd prevented. I told myself it didn't matter. That I'd done it for the team, not for recognition. But patterns don't look like patterns until it's too late. By noon, the whispers had started. Slack messages went unanswered. A meeting I was always included in disappeared from my calendar without explanation. People avoided sitting next to me in the break room. No one asked what happened. They didn't need to. The narrative had already been delivered. Clean, confident, convincing. And I realized something terrifying. He didn't just want me gone. He wanted me discredited. I sat at my desk staring at my computer screen. My inbox was unusually quiet. Projects I'd been actively managing suddenly had new point people assigned without any transition conversation. Conversations I'd been part of were continuing without me in threads I couldn't see. It was surgical. Precise. My access hadn't been revoked. That would have been too obvious, too actionable. Instead, I was being quietly erased. Made irrelevant before I was officially removed. Colleague walked past my desk. Someone I'd worked with for 7 years. Our eyes met briefly. She looked away quickly, her pace increasing. That hurt more than the meeting. I picked up my bag and left work early for the first time in months. That night, I opened something he assumed no longer existed. At home, long after the adrenaline wore off, I logged into an old internal system I hadn't touched in years. A compliance archive I'd helped organize early in my career. Most of it had been migrated. Some of it flagged for deletion. One folder remained. Unlabeled. Untouched. My hands shook as I clicked it. The system was outdated. One of those legacy platforms companies keep running because too many processes depend on it. Most people had forgotten it existed. Kept saying they'd phase it out, but it kept getting delayed due to budget constraints. I'd been assigned to help digitize records during a compliance audit 6 years ago. Tedious work that nobody wanted. I'd spent months organizing decades of old files, scanning documents, creating indexes that made sense. I remembered this folder because it had been marked for special handling. Documents that needed legal review before migration. But the legal review never happened. Budget cuts, priority shifts, the usual corporate chaos. The folder had been sitting there ever since. Waiting. The first document made my stomach drop. It was an internal risk memo. Dated 7 months before the issue he'd just blamed on me. Signed by him. The document was an internal risk memo. Dated months before the issue he'd blamed on me. Signed by him. I stared at the timestamp, then at the screen replaying in my mind. The bullet points, the accusations, the confidence with which he'd erased himself from responsibility. This wasn't incompetence. This was deception. The memo was clear and detailed. He'd identified the exact problems that eventually caused the project delays. He'd outlined the risks in bullet points. He'd known what was coming and had documented it precisely. And he'd done nothing. No, worse than nothing. He'd documented the risks, then buried the memo where no one would find it. When the problems materialized exactly as he'd predicted, he pointed fingers everywhere except at himself. Me. The memo should have triggered escalation protocols. Should have been shared with the project team and leadership. Should have led to preventive action. Instead, it sat in a forgotten folder while he let the problems grow until they were big enough to need a scapegoat. And that was only the beginning. Kept reading. There were more files in the folder. More memos. More warnings he'd written and buried. Pattern of calculated negligence. A history of manufactured crises. Each one carefully documented, then hidden. I stopped sleeping properly. Every night after work I read emails, draft, archived approvals, quiet warnings that had gone nowhere. During the day I kept my head down, took notes, let him believe I was retreating quietly. I wasn't. I was building a timeline. The files revealed a strategy. He'd been managing his career through controlled explosions, creating problems, letting them escalate to crisis point, then swooping in to fix them while redirecting blame to whoever was convenient. Before me there'd been another senior lead. Someone named Vincent who'd left the company suddenly 2 years ago. I'd never met him. He was gone before my manager got promoted to his current position. But Vincent's name appeared in several old memos. Always as the person responsible for issues my manager had actually caused or allowed to happen. I found Vincent's exit interview notes buried in the archive. He'd tried to defend himself, provided documentation. But by then, the narrative was already set. He left rather than fight a battle that seemed unwinnable. I wondered if Vincent knew these files existed. I wondered if he'd looked for them and just didn't know where to search. I made copies of everything, organized it chronologically, cross-referenced incidents with outcomes. Then my manager made his next move. In another meeting, he announced I'd been relieved of my role to restore confidence in the department. The word confidence landed like a slap. I watched faces nod. Sep, move on. And I understood something vital. The more he talked, the more evidence he created. This meeting was smaller, just the department leads. I wasn't supposed to be there, but someone had forgotten to remove me from the calendar invite. I sat in the back, silent, watching, recording every word in my memory. My manager stood at the front, walking through the lessons learned from my failures. How the department would recover. How trust would be rebuilt with clients and leadership. He had slides prepared, talking points, a whole presentation about moving forward without me. Every sentence was another contradiction to his own buried memos. Every criticism was something he'd known was coming and failed to prevent. Every lesson learned was something he'd already documented as a risk months ago. He was so confident, so smooth. He didn't notice me taking notes in the back of the room. I decided to let him keep talking. The more he committed to this narrative, the harder he'd fall when the truth came out. Buried deeper in the archive was a performance review draft. One he'd written about me. One he'd never submitted to HR. Praised my work. Directly contradicted his current claims. I laughed out loud, sharp, disbelieving. He'd forgotten his own paper trail. The draft was dated 4 months ago. Right before his tone toward me had started shifting from collegial to critical. Rose consistently demonstrates exceptional judgment in high-pressure situations. Her attention to detail has prevented multiple potential issues from escalating. Her leadership is valued by both peers and clients. Strongly recommend for advancement consideration in next review cycle. I read it 3 times, matching each praise to each current accusation. Exceptional judgment, now blamed for poor decisions. Attention to detail, now accused of sloppiness and oversight. Valued leadership, now removed from all projects and responsibilities. Something had changed 4 months ago. Something that made him pivot from praising me to destroying me. But what? I searched my memory. What happened 4 months ago that would make me a threat instead of an asset? Then I remembered. The director position. The one that opened up when Catherine retired. I'd applied. So had he. Neither of us got it. They hired externally. But I'd made it to the final round of interviews. He hadn't. HR finally called me in. They expected emotion. Gave them dates. Asked questions. Calm ones. Clarifying ones. I watched their posture change. Because for the first time they realized something was off. The HR director sat across from me. A folder open on her desk. She started with a standard script. Concerns about my performance. Need to discuss my future with the company. Support available during transitions. I let her finish completely. Then I asked, "Can you tell me specifically which decisions I made that led to the project delays?" She paused. Consulted her notes. "Well, according to the report submitted, you approved several vendor contracts without proper vetting. Which contracts specifically? I'd like to review the approval documents and understand the vetting process that was missed." Another pause. Longer this time. "I don't have those details here in front of me. Can you tell me the dates when I allegedly approved these contracts?" She looked uncomfortable now. "The report doesn't specify exact dates." That's interesting. Because vendor approvals require documented sign-off through the procurement system. That system timestamps everything and creates an audit trail. I'd like to pull those records. Her pen stopped moving across the page. That's when I saw the pattern clearly. It wasn't just me. Promotions aligned with favoritism. Mistakes consistently reassigned. The same names protected. The same names sacrificed. I wasn't unlucky. I was convenient. After the HR meeting, I started mapping connections more deliberately. Who got promoted during my manager's tenure? Who got blamed when things went wrong? Who survived scrutiny and who didn't? The pattern was obvious once I looked for it. 4 people had left the department under questionable circumstances in the past 18 months. All of them skilled. All of them well regarded before their sudden downfalls. All of them gone after sudden performance issues that seemed to appear from nowhere. Meanwhile, 3 people had been rapidly promoted during the same period. All of them happened to have personal connections to my manager. College friends. Former colleagues from his previous company. People who owed him favors or loyalty. The department's actual performance had declined during this period. Client satisfaction scores were down. Project delivery times had increased. Budget overruns had become more common. But the metrics were always explained away with individual failures. Never systemic problems. Never leadership problems. Vincent's exit wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a pattern of behavior. And my manager was about to overreach. Because this time, he'd picked someone who knew where the bodies were buried. He doubled down. In writing, he escalated the claims, formalized them, sent them higher up the chain. Every sentence contradicted something I already had saved. I didn't interrupt. I archived. The formal complaint came through the internal reporting system. A detailed document outlining my pattern of negligence and poor judgment that has damaged client relationships and department credibility. 6 pages. Specific incidents. Serious allegations that would follow me forever if they stood unchallenged. It was sent to senior leadership, HR, and the compliance office. He was making this official, permanent, a matter of record that would follow me to any future employer who did a reference check. I read through every claim carefully. Matched each one to the evidence I'd collected. Incident 1. Approving a vendor contract that led to delays. His buried memo showed he'd selected that vendor over my documented objections and my concerns had been filed in writing. Incident 2. Missing a client deadline. His own email, forwarded to me at the last minute, showed he'd withheld critical information until it was too late to meet the timeline he'd originally set. Incident 3. Budget overrun on a project. His signature on the change orders that caused the overrun. Approved without my knowledge or input. On and on. Each accusation matched to his own documented actions. He'd built a case against himself without realizing it. Someone else finally remembered who I was. The compliance officer. She'd worked with me years ago on that same audit. She remembered my precision, my consistency. She listened, really listened, and she asked for copies. Her name was Veronica. We'd worked together during that same compliance audit where I'd organized the archive system. She'd been impressed by my attention to detail back then. Had even written a commendation that went into my personnel file. She called me directly, not through official channels. Rose, I saw the formal complaint that came through. Before this goes further, I wanted to talk to you off the record. I chose my words carefully. I appreciate that, Veronica. This doesn't match what I know about your work. And frankly, some of these claims contradict documentation I've seen in other contexts over the years. What kind of documentation? Risk assessments, compliance memos, things that should have been escalated but weren't. I'm seeing gaps in the paper trail that don't make sense when I compare them to the accusations. Took a breath. Would it help if I showed you what I've found? She was quiet for a moment. Officially, I can't advise you on that. Unofficially, yes, it would help a great deal. The audit started quietly. Leadership requested documentation. Not from me. From him. He walked past my desk that afternoon without looking at me. I could feel the shift in the air. The email went out Friday afternoon. A politely worded request for supporting documentation related to the incidents outlined in his formal complaint. The tone was professional, procedural, but the implications were clear to anyone who understood corporate politics. They were checking his story. I happened to be in the hallway when he got the email. I watched his face change as he read it on his phone. The confidence faltered. His jaw tightened visibly. He looked up, scanning the office. His eyes landed on me for just a second. Then he looked away quickly and walked toward his office with purpose. I went back to my desk, opened my email, started working on a mundane task like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. The questions had started. The scrutiny he'd directed at me was now slowly turning toward him. And he knew it. Over the weekend I got an email from him, sent late Saturday night. The subject line, clarification needed on several points. It was rambling, defensive, trying to reframe several of his previous claims without admitting he'd been wrong. I didn't respond. Fear changes people fast. He snapped at assistants, sent late-night emails full of typos, corrected himself mid-sentence in meetings. The calm authority he'd used to destroy me was gone completely. And still I said nothing. Monday morning he arrived early. I could hear him in his office on the phone, voice tight and urgent. Throughout the day, he sent 3 separate emails trying to clarify his previous documentation. Each one contradicting something he'd said before. Each one making things worse. In meetings he stumbled over explanations. Lost his train of thought mid-presentation. Overcorrected innocent comments into defensive justifications that raised more questions. People noticed. The same colleagues who'd avoided me last week now watched him with curiosity. Questions in their eyes. He called an unexpected team meeting to address any confusion about recent changes in the department. Spent 30 minutes talking in circles, saying nothing of substance, creating more questions than answers. I sat in the back silent, taking notes on my laptop. After the meeting, 2 colleagues approached me separately. Quietly asked if I was okay. Said things felt off lately. I thanked them but said nothing else. The rope was unraveling on its own. I just had to wait and watch. Then they found the deleted email. Server backups, don't forget. The message was clear. Strategic. Calculated. Let Rose take the fall. I closed my laptop and exhaled for the first time in weeks. The IT department found it during a routine compliance check triggered by Veronica's audit request. An email from my manager to one of his promoted colleagues, sent 3 months ago. The full message was worse than the subject line. Vincent's exit worked perfectly. People barely questioned it. Same approach here. Create enough small incidents to establish a pattern, document everything from our perspective, then move decisively when the timing is right. Let Rose take the fall for the vendor delays. She's competent enough that people will believe she just got overconfident and stopped being careful. Time it with the reorganization so it looks like natural consequences rather than a targeted action. There was more discussion of managing the narrative. Plans for controlling HR's perception from the start. A timeline that matched exactly with when his tone toward me had shifted from supportive to critical. Premeditated. Documented. Undeniable. Veronica called me at home that evening. Her voice was tight with controlled anger. Rose, I need you to come in tomorrow morning. Bring everything you've collected. We're escalating this immediately to the executive level. HR asked for one final statement. Kept it short. No emotion. Just facts. Just evidence. I didn't accuse. I let the record speak for itself. The meeting was in a different building. Present. Veronica from compliance, 2 HR directors I'd never met, and a lawyer from our legal department. No manager. No colleagues. Just official personnel. I'd prepared a comprehensive timeline. Printed documentation organized in labeled folders. Everything arranged chronologically so the pattern was impossible to miss. I walked them through it methodically. Here's the memo showing he knew about the vendor issues months in advance. Here's the email chain showing he withheld information that caused the deadline miss. Here's the performance review draft praising work he later condemned publicly. Here's the pattern with Vincent and 3 other former colleagues who left under similar circumstances. Here's the deleted email laying out his strategy in his own words. I spoke for 40 minutes, answered their questions calmly and precisely, provided additional documentation when requested. When I finished, the room was silent for a long moment. The senior HR director closed her folder slowly. Thank you, Rose. We have everything we need. I stood to leave, paused at the door. For what it's worth, I said quietly. I just wanted to do good work. The meeting happened without him. Leadership met behind closed doors. When they emerged hours later, they didn't look at me with suspicion anymore. They looked uncomfortable. The meeting lasted 6 hours. I wasn't present, but I heard about it afterward from Veronica, who felt I deserved to know. They'd reviewed everything. The buried memos. The deleted emails. The pattern of scapegoating across multiple employees. The performance reviews that contradicted public statements. They'd also pulled records on Vincent and the other 3 people who'd left under questionable circumstances. Examined the circumstances of each departure. Found similar patterns of behavior. My manager was given a chance to respond to the allegations. According to Veronica, he tried to explain it away. Said things were taken out of context. That I'd misunderstood his intentions. That the deleted email was just venting frustration, not a real plan. But the evidence was too consistent, too well documented, too damning. By Wednesday afternoon, everyone in the department knew something significant was happening. Meetings were cancelled without explanation. People were being called in for individual conversations with HR. The atmosphere was tense, uncertain. I went about my work quietly. Still technically reassigned to minor tasks. Still officially under review. But people's eyes had changed when they looked at me now. Then my status changed. My name was cleared quietly. No announcement. No apology. Just restoration. And a question. Would you like to stay? The email came from HR Thursday morning. Brief. Professional. Following our investigation, all claims against your performance have been withdrawn. Your assignments are being restored effective immediately. Your record has been cleared of all related documentation. That was it. No explanation of what had happened. No acknowledgement of what I'd been through. An hour later, Veronica called. I wish I could say this differently, Rose. You deserved better from this company. You deserve better. I know. The official record is corrected. That has to be enough because we can't undo the past few weeks or publicly discuss the investigation. I understood what she wasn't saying. Corporate liability. Legal exposure. The company couldn't acknowledge wrongdoing too explicitly without opening themselves up to lawsuits. What happens now? Yes. That's up to you. Your position is yours if you want it. With a formal apology in your file and compensation for the stress this situation caused. Or if you'd prefer to explore other options, we'll provide a generous exit package and excellent references. He tried to contact me. I didn't answer. No call returned. No message read. No closure offered. I'd said everything I needed to say with my silence. His first attempt was an email. Subject line. Can we talk? I deleted it without reading the body text. Then a text message to my personal phone. Rose, please. I need to explain. I blocked the number immediately. He tried to approach me in the parking lot Friday afternoon. I saw him waiting by my car from the building window. I turned around, went back inside, worked for another hour, and left through a different exit. There was nothing he could say that mattered anymore. No explanation that would change what he'd done. No apology that would undo the damage or restore the weeks of fear and uncertainty. He tried to erase me systematically, professionally, permanently. I'd survived by being exactly what I'd always been. Thorough, precise, prepared. He wanted closure. Conversation. Perhaps a chance to salvage something of his reputation or ease his conscience. I wanted him to live with the uncertainty the same way I'd lived with the fear. The announcement came the next morning. His fall. Administrative leave. Effective immediately. People whispered again, but this time they whispered about him. Felt no triumph. Only relief. The email went out at 8 a.m. Monday. Vague corporate language about personnel matters under review and pending internal investigation. His name was removed from the organizational chart. His office locked. His system access suspended. By noon, everyone knew something serious was happening. The rumors spread through Slack channels and breakroom conversations. People pieced together fragments of truth with wild speculation. Some were shocked. Others said they'd always felt something was off about him. A few admitted quietly they'd witnessed questionable behavior but hadn't wanted to get involved or risk their own positions. Vincent called me that afternoon. Someone from HR had reached out to him about the investigation, asked him to provide his documentation from 2 years ago. Rose, he said, his voice shaking slightly. I thought I was crazy. I thought I'd imagined the pattern or been too sensitive. You weren't crazy. Thank you. For finishing what I couldn't. We talked for 20 minutes. He told me about his experience, how it had affected his confidence for months afterward. I made my final decision that night. I walked away on my terms. Not out of bitterness. Out of clarity. I didn't want my victory tied to the place where I'd been almost erased. The generous exit package included a year's salary, extended benefits, and references that would open doors anywhere I wanted to go. More than fair. More than I expected. But that wasn't why I took it. I realized, sitting at my desk that final week, that I didn't want to rebuild here. Every hallway held memories of being invisible. Every meeting room reminded me of being erased. Every colleague who'd looked away when I needed them. Proven my point. Cleared my name. Exposed the pattern of behavior. But staying meant accepting that the system had allowed this to happen in the first place. That it took extraordinary effort and lucky access to archived files for the truth to matter. I deserved more than a company that only valued me after I'd fought for basic fairness. My last day was quiet. A few genuine goodbyes from people who'd supported me. Many awkward ones from people who felt guilty. Veronica hugged me in the parking lot. You're too good for this place anyway. I know. I drove away without looking back. The file was closed. What he lost and what I gained. He lost authority, credibility, the illusion of control he'd built his entire career strategy around. I gained something quieter, stronger, my name back, my future intact, My voice, finally used at the right moment. He never contacted me again. And I never needed him to. 3 months later, I accepted a position at a smaller firm. Better culture. Better leadership. Better respect for the kind of quiet competence I'd always offered. I heard through former colleagues that my old manager's administrative leave had turned into a quiet termination. No charges, no public scandal. Just a carefully worded mutual separation agreement and an NDA that protected everyone involved. Vincent got a settlement too. The company had quietly reached out to the others who'd left under suspicious circumstances, offering compensation and corrected references. The department restructured completely. New leadership brought in from outside. Several of the rapidly promoted colleagues moved to different teams or left entirely. I don't think about him often anymore. When I do, it's not with anger or even satisfaction. He believed I would stay silent forever. That competence without confrontation meant weakness. That I could be erased because I didn't fight loudly or make scenes. I believed in timing. In preparation. In letting the truth speak when speaking loudly would have been dismissed as emotion. That made all the difference. My career didn't end in that meeting room where he said my name like a conclusion. Pause. Reset. Redirected toward something better. And I moved forward knowing exactly what I was worth, and what I would never tolerate again.